So our speakers would know about the audience and they can orient their discussion as per the poll results. So I'll just wait for 5 seconds more and I'll end the poll. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Thank you. So I'm sharing the results. So as we can see, 67% are architects, 10% are students, and 23% are from the other profession. Okay, thank you everyone for the poll. Okay, moving forward. So I would like to first invite Chitra sir. So Mr. Jain is chairman of board at Cathedral Technologies Private Limited. He did architecture from IIT Kharagpur and started his AutoCAD training and consultancy just after graduation. So I'll hand over to Chitra sir.
Thank you, Farhad. So first of all, I'd like to welcome all our esteemed panelists and so glad to be looking forward to hearing from them and welcome all the participants. And so I'll not take much time. In fact, I'd like to quickly hand back to the team. I'll just take 2 slides about ourselves. So as Capricorn Technologies, we've been into now supporting the entire construction industry with software solutions since 1987. And today we are serving more than 20,000 customers across the country. So if you could, Farhad, move to the next one, I'll just wrapping up slightly faster. So we are partnered with Autodesk, and then we have also partnered with many similar companies to provide holistic solutions to our customers. And so before I hand over back to Farhad, what I will like to just give an opening remark is like, now today we are on 21st of December, and we are almost at the end of the year. And at the end of the year, we always start reflecting back, like what's been past this year. And in fact, today when we sit and reflect, we think about past 2 years in one go. We just don't look at 1 year. And that's been a very challenging year, and it has probably changed the perspective of all of us to how do we look at our life. And of course, one of the biggest thing which all of us have probably learned is to feel safe and comfortable in whatever we have been doing. And one of the key change which we see now in the current thought process is that when we talk about sustainability, it is now no more about sustainability of our built environment only. It's about now people are thinking about the last living element on the planet Earth. So sustainability is now thought process it's a much more comprehensive thought process. And I think with that, and that's what we are here to hear about. I think most of the panelists are now and are going to talk about how are we going to be more responsible towards our entire built environment and our planet Earth. So with that, I'll hand over back to Farhad.
Thank you, sir. Okay, so first I would like to call Mr. Dean De Cruz. So Dean De Cruz, a graduate in architecture, is actively involved in professional practice as well as in academics. He has conducted numerous workshops and seminars on architecture, planning, and environment across India as well as abroad. His works and articles have been published in leading magazines in India and abroad. So over to you, Dean, sir.
So Farhad, just a reminder to all the participants, please put in your questions in Q&A box for the panelists to read, and we will try and answer them at the end. But if any panelist would like to speak in between and take them up, they're absolutely at their own choice. Thank you.
Yeah, hello everyone, and yeah, welcome to this short seminar. As you may know, the 3 of us, Chitra, Sanjay, and myself, are part of a mini little club, which actually is looking at architecture in a way in which we are responsible about what we do, in a way which we're trying to contribute to the environment. And basically, we're going to just share our own little journeys, I think, through what we've done and whatever learnings we can have, and showcase it in and ask for your opinion, your feedback, and so it goes. So you know, share. Yeah, so we run a firm called Mozaic, which is Mozaic as in a sort of mosaic of design disciplines. So we're architects, we're product designers, we're graphic people, we're concerned with what's happening in the world and offering a holistic solution to the way we work. And the first thing when offering a solution in architecture, I think the first thing is to really think out of the box. So this is the box we designed. It's actually a museum. It's called Museum of Goa, which actually houses contemporary artworks. It's on in an industrial estate, and hence it's a very high footprint and squarish sort of plot. And of course, we decided to break the box and look at it differently, and how can we actually create something that's interesting in a fairly sort of standard industrial layout. And one enters the building askew, move into the various spaces from right on top down, just skylit, and also carve inside the box, create these double height spaces where you're linking all these spaces together and connecting them visually, which is very essential in a gallery, where you can actually read the way you're going to move through the space and also short circuit it in whatever way you want to. A lot of our work is actually drawn from the past, it's drawn from tradition, but adds that contemporary twist to it. This is the cathedral we designed in Karwar, which is just south of Goa. The cathedral, as you know, is a mother church. So it's an enormous church building which can accommodate up to 1,000 people. It's in an area where Bangalore tiles, clay tiles are used as roofing systems. There's granite stone that's used traditionally. That's in fact it's an export zone in Karwar for granite stone, and the building is very unlike a traditional cathedral. Yet it draws its essence from tradition, but in a very contemporary manner. So it's actually a very linear building. It's like a giant amphitheater. It has a roofing system which actually floats above the whole building. And the roof actually rests on internal columns, not on the edge walls. So very much like a tree, almost like protecting the followers who visit the church. And so it's a lot of it is in granite, and it's got the skylit area all around and in the center as well to highlight the altar. So that's the structural system that we have. We've designed about 300 houses across Goa and India, and everywhere we design it, what is the spirit of the space? So this is right on the waterfront. We said, let's make it feel like a ship's deck, so it's the house just sits on the waterfront and just opens out to the sea, very much like the side of a ship. In this building, which is actually set into an old stone quarry, we actually follow. The roof is a sloping roof that gently rises up from the south to the north, following the old quarry line. So it slowly steps up in the space. And the whole roof is designed to actually have solar panels on it. And that's so it's completely solar ready. And it's so important today when we're looking at alternative energies that we keep our buildings ready for alternative energies to come on it. And therefore, a south-facing roof, of course, is the most efficient way. So our buildings now have this solar readiness to it, ready to accept alternative energy technologies into it. And you can see the way the roof slowly rises up, and using new technologies of lightweight roofing system, very light steelwork that move up into the space. In this house, which is for this artist friend Subodh character, we of course used his artwork in the building. We responded to his contemporary artwork, on one side opening it up to the garden, just glazing the whole building, and on the other side actually having these perforated metal sheets in the north And the north, of course, you don't get direct sunlight, and you get a very nice diffused light. It's the whole northern face of the building is just metalwork of this artwork. Contemporariness is also about drawing from tradition, but reinterpreting it. How can you, so this is, it's just not about the building, it's about the external space. So this is a housing complex where we've actually recreated the village street. All the units are, each unit is completely different and unique in its style. And you have this streetway, this little gateway that you move through, and every unit is unique, a different dimension, different layout, different detailing in it. We work a lot in the jungles. I mean, so does Sanjay and Chitra. And so these are projects where we are actually responding. The tree house in the jungle, where we're responding using actually the fallen forest wood of the jungle, but adding again these whatever modern elements and modernizing it. That's the main building of it, which is actually, the whole structure actually rests on fallen tree trunks. So it's actually solid logs of wood that actually support that building behind it. So responding it in some way. Another large project, again, where we're using contemporary materials so almost like tech in the jungle in a way, and just creating very lightweight structures in this space. This is a more recent project that we've just completed in Tadoba, where the whole building actually sits well above the land. It's we wanted actually the wildlife to actually move below that space. So it's a very lightweight construction system that sits above the ground. That's the finished product, where it's elevated. It sits at canopy level, and you get this enormous view of the jungle around and this lake beyond that. Oopsie, sorry. That's the inside of one of the rooms. We've angular the room, so the rooms actually get 1.5 times the width view out into the jungle. That's the outside areas. This is a building which we're doing in Noida. It's stuck, of course. It's a completely prefab building. It's a hollow column, hollow beam system, but all the services actually run through the core of the building. So even your air conditioning, your plumbing, your power lines, communication lines actually run through. I think the whole idea is that it's a building which has not services mounted on it, but integrated into it. And it's completely dismantleable, such that, and if it's built in steel, so with steel prices going up, you can probably sell it for more than it cost you to build it when you want to demolish it. The floors, of course, are just stone slabs sitting on neoprene pads. And those are all the little features that we've added to it. This is a school in Bijapur. It's not yet built. But again, Bijapur is a hot and dry climate. We decided that we create these wind towers, actually capture air at a high level, hydrate it. And the layout is very, just like a series of columns, and all the walling systems are actually flexible. So you can actually change the layouts of the classrooms and laboratories. And that's the main concept of the cooling system, which basically takes in air at a high level, hydrates it, and brings it down and cools space. Yeah, for the same group, this is the library building. Again, so we have a cafe below, and we have all the auditorium and the classrooms above, and that's how the auditorium and the classrooms light and ventilate with top lighting and bottom ventilation systems. How that moves through the space. In the lodges also, it's all about a response to where you are. So in the lodges, for example, a lot of the lodges are built in areas which get very hot and very cold. And therefore, we have to have, during winters, a natural warming system, using like thermal blankets over water bodies and absorbing thermal mass. And summers, of course, how do you cool the building? So all these are responsible ways of actually responding to varying climates. This is another lodge in Bhuj, where again, we're looking at how do we integrate technologies into the lodge in terms of, whereas alternative energy systems, natural cooling systems, appropriate materials. And the only way we can do this, is very difficult these days, is actually convincing a client and going green, because a lot of them think it's much more expensive. And the only way to do it is actually walk the talk yourself. So in our own complex of buildings, which have 3 buildings and a piece of land on the side, we decided to actually demonstrate it. So those are 3 buildings, which is the architecture on one side, product line on the other side, and our design center, where we actually have outreach programs on the issue of design and the environment. in the land at the side, we actually have our own little mini forest and agricultural area going up, trying to grow at least our own food. Those are the buildings, and those are the interiors of the various buildings that we have over here. So I'll leave it with that, and I'm let Sanjay continue and leave a little time for all of us to have a question and answer session. And that's our buildings in the forest, at the edge of the forest. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean, sir. So thank you for presenting your unique projects and the concept behind them. I personally have visited Museum of Goa by Mr. Sudeep. So really good design, sir, good design. So, so moving on. So let me reshare my screen. So I would like to invite Ms. Chitra Vishwanath. She is Principal Architect and MD BIOME Environmental Solutions. She is the Nigerian National Diploma in Civil Engineering in 1980, Graduate Diploma in Architecture from CEPT in 1988, Rainwater Harvesting Workshop. She was keynote speaker at Indonesian Institute of Architects, Jakarta, then participated in Berlin Energy Dialogue, conducted CD Positive workshop at Archiprix 2017 at CEPT, and Charles Courier Chair January at Goa College of Architecture, Panjim. So since March 2018, she is independent director of Shiv Moga Smart City Limited. So over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Chakresh, and thank you for the introduction. And I'm very sorry for the delay in joining in. I'll share my slides. Thank you. Share here. Let it go. Yeah. So we have to slideshow. So we at BIOME are like we've been around for 30 years and we have practiced in different scales. And one of the scale which we have practiced a lot is the small house. The small house for, I must say, the very interesting clientele of Bangalore who want to really make a house of their own, and if possible, it has to be ecological. So we build with earth a lot because the best earth available in India to build is in Bangalore. So why not use the city for the resource it can give? Most of the earth is usually sourced from the basement or the water tank, or if there is a larger project happening. So this is a house in 30 feet by 40 feet plot. And you can see that everything is there. You can see the large solar panels too. And it has retained the neem tree within its area. So that's the plan of it. And this is a section. So you can see how one has to really modulate that everything comes within the space, but also have fun. Also make it aesthetically different from otherwise the normal construction. But in the smallest of the place, you have to get the best light and you have to get the best accommodation for everything needed in the house, from the washing machine to the dishwasher and extra space outside to use in the kitchen. The space is inside, and that's the terrace. So terrace is one of our favorite element in a house. I don't know how to stop this, but So the terrace is used for energy. In this case, the terrace is used for solar water heating, the electricity, and also a small biogas. And there is the Gujarat boilers. All sorts of energies on the terrace. We collect the good water, we call it lifeline water for drinking and cooking purpose on the terrace, and we treat the wastewater on the terrace because that's the only place where you get the sun. The sun and terrace go synonymously, and you use it to the complete possibility. Why is my, okay. So similarly, our interest, while it lies in terms of where's the material coming from, which is usually a basement, also can the building itself give you the material. So this is the one picture on the left is the house made 80 years back, and it didn't have the best of light and ventilation. We brought it down and we used it to make the next house. And having problem moving. So this is the way the house was. You can see it's not great internally, and it was quite easy to convince the people to remove the house and redo it. And we have now, in the same space, have 3 homes for the 2 children and the parents. So yes, it's usually that you use the wood. So you keep the doors and windows and here the beams and you use. But could it be something more? So this is the plan of the house now, the new plan. And luckily the site was large enough. So we kept all the materials we were able to get from the demolished building. We kept them neatly. You can see bricks, complete bricks. And this kind of complete bricks one could get only because the mortar was offline. Broken plaster, broken concrete, the stones, the old windows. But what really happened was that when we started digging for foundation, we found that the soil was soft and there was water. And we went back to history and found that this was also a lake bed some 100 years back. So it was filled up and turned into colonies, the way Bangalore does all the time. So we made these foundations, which are called well foundations, with the help of design from Professor Yogananda, and filled that with the rubble. So here is the moonscape of the site, and that's a drawing where we decided where all the well foundation would happen. And it's all filled up, a grade being put, and the rest of the construction happens. So the stone which was earlier in the foundation becomes part of the house above, also saves cost. So that's how the building is now. All the trees saved, inside is better lit and ventilated, and within a budget the client gave. And nothing went into urban landfill. So they wanted courtyards within, they get courtyards. Similarly, again, taking from what Dean spoke about, the steel and how you can get back the material. So this was a project for a small school in a 10,000 square foot plot, in a 15,000 square foot plot, a 10,000 square foot of school. So we decided that we should make it in such a way that the building can be moved by its part and repurposed or reused, rebuilt with the same material. So luckily here, the land was available to the clients only for 5 years. So it was easy to convince them that they use materials which can be reused completely. So here the foundation too can be removed, because reaching up to the plinth, we have used what in Bangalore we get as stone slabs so that we can fill up for the interior. Then the walls are the external facades are the mix of aluminium, wood and glass. The roof is GI sheet and the support systems are of steel. That's a plan of the whole place. These sections. We made models, we put lots of trees, we call the columns the trees. But the structural engineer brought 2 columns into one by the way he decided to span. This is the building. This is what is inside. The walls are of paper tubes. So if you don't remove them, they can just they can compost. Even the furniture for the children is with paper so that it's much lighter. These walls, the curved walls, reduce the reverberation because it's in fact largely a large shed. The flooring is with paver blocks filled with, the lower portion is filled with quarry dust, easily available in Bangalore. So not only do you get back the flooring, you will also get back quarry dust, which I'm sure has doubled its cost. Now, this is about 5 years back. This is the interiors. And this is my favorite part of the whole project is the small toilet. It's a toilet for the small occupants, and all the pipelines come to this center space, so which can be opened if it gets clogged or something, and then they go out in a larger pipe. So important that one also works with the services and has fun. And this center space now has a curtain. That's where the children, if they've soiled their dresses, the dress is changed, or they wait till a toilet is available for them. Then we made our own office on the first and second floor. And here we changed the way we put the roof. So we put the roof, it's a GI sheet, but the top of the roof is with jali blocks, so which allows for water to go through, but it shades the roof and doesn't become hot inside. That's our office. The terrace is used for discussions. The inside is opening the east with a huge amount of shading. It's just the light needed internally. This is a school we are doing in Bellary. And here the air was the issue which we wanted to work with, because the air is laden with dust because of the factory nearby. And so we decided that we would take cleaner air from the top and also cool the classrooms. Right now, we are mostly busy with designing collectives. Collectives are where a developer picks up a larger piece of land and people come together and ask that the space to be designed for themselves to live, but also design the whole area for energy, water, and food. So nobody owns a place, but they live collectively, and the land is decided where the construction would be happening, decided upon the kind of soil which is available, the soil which cannot be used for agriculture. So the whole land is studied. The waterways of the land is studied. We make riparian zones where no more construction would happen, and then decide on where you will put the buildings. The buildings come in the last. Similarly, projects, so this is how the buildings come, and they become a community space rather than plotted development. And we do a lot of small homes, and sometimes as small as something on a terrace. So this is a 30 by 40 plot, and you do a really small addition of a bedroom and a kitchen. And what gives us the most joy is how the people use the place and they feel happy about it. Here is the lady of the house doing her yoga in front of the space we've designed under the light. And that's what is the best award one could get. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. So thank you for sharing your unique construction techniques from, starting from a small project as small as a terrace to big, large scale projects. I really enjoyed your creative use of construction technologies. I have, ma'am, one small question. So Bangalore's high SBC helps you in experimenting with the construction technologies?
Well, it's not always everywhere there's high SBC. If you notice the house where we put the well foundation, it wasn't high SBC at all. It's not high SBC, it's the kind of soil which is available here, which has less clay. So, the mix required is lower in terms of lower amount of quarry dust or sand is required. And it's not a great soil for growing food. So it's the best soil for making earth blocks.
Right, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. So, I'll just, Sanjay sir, I'll just allow me to share your intro then.
Okay. Okay, just a minute. I'll stop my sharing. There.
Yes,
Does that work, Farhad?
yes, sir. Okay. So next is Mr. Sanjay Prakash. He is principal consultant at Shift Studio for Habitat Futures. Sanjay Prakash, BARC and AIIA is an architect with a commitment to energy conscious architecture, eco-friendly design, people's participation in planning, music, and production design. Over the years, he has integrated all his work with the practice of new urbanism and sustainability in his professional and personal life. So over to you, Sanjay sir.
Okay, you'll have to stop sharing so that I can start this. So I started too soon, I guess. Sorry about that.
You need no introduction actually.
But this can be seen now, I imagine.
Yes, sir. But you can put it in the
okay
slide mode.
Slide mode. Okay, there you are. So I've put together the presentation slightly differently in the sense that I haven't gone project wise, I have gone concept wise. So here you are, a talk which is illustrated with tropical examples of work by us as well as our colleagues. This particular one is from Sandeep Virmani of Bhuj, who has put together this wonderful office made of found wood and recycled thatch. So next, please. So here we are. So architecture is nothing but the technology of organizing space. And this is one of our early projects where we discovered that even this was considered not space by a lot of Western architects who thought of this as open space and not closed space at all. But courtyards are definitely a part of the way we organize our spaces in tropical countries. And this was the entrance of a school which we designed. Conventionally, responsible architecture consisted of doing safe and code compliant architecture, which was good value for money. Which means what? I mean, safety here can be defined in a number of ways. For example, this particular meditation hall is made of scantlings of salwood, which are nail jointed. So this is a 12-meter span, which is put together with nails. And what I'm very happy to see now is that despite the fact that you consider wood short-lived, this has happily weathered 25 monsoons. And in fact, because of some rotting in some members, it was even changed. This is the beauty of nail jointing, that you can even change some of the members and replace them as they rot away. So safety can have a number of interesting variations. And this too is kind of safe, right? I mean, at least this is code compliant. This was the Shanghai Dome that we made in the World Expo, which was at that time the world's largest bamboo dome. And it was grown over with herbs, which were herbs of Tibetan medicine to indicate an Indo-China connection. And it was equally code compliant. It was code compliant in China as well as India. India happens to have a bamboo code, and we use that, including discovery of some misprints, to design this and have it proofed. Now, brand value, however, value for money is quite interesting in the sense that we designed this factory in a way that it accepted a lot of winter sun, which is what you see here on the south facade, and prevented most of the summer sun from reaching the inside. And we discovered something very interesting that, for example, this factory, they used to keep the showrooms at 22 and the factories were not air conditioned at all. So they were literally sweatshops. But when we started working on this, we discovered that for the same running cost, one can set up the temperature of the showrooms to 24 and the factory to 28. And that allowed a much better environment and also lint freedom from happening in this garment export factory. So we did that. And now the interesting thing is I met this owner a few years ago, and recently he said that, you know what happens, because this is known as the best place to work in Noida, people line up outside. Every morning they employ people, so they line up outside and they just, I get the pick of the best embroiderers in Noida to be able to do my work. So this is a funny thing that brand value can come from very unknown factors like having a good environment to work in. So this is how conventional technology used to be, and then the world became green. So two factors came in: efficiency and substitution. Efficiency was to get better value from reduced operations cost, and sufficiency or substitution was to do the same thing but with renewable resources instead of fossil resources. Now, examples of this, now, efficiency can be demonstrated by these kinds of buildings in Manesar, which we've designed, in which we are doing 30, 40, 50, 60% better on water consumption and electricity consumption than conventional buildings. Despite the fact that this building on the left, which is designed by the Malaysian architect Ken Yang, has a glazed north facade, and therefore a lot of light comes in from there. The other facade is entirely different, and in fact, no sunlight can peek into from that side. Similarly, on the right, we have examples of the Agilent headquarters building in Manesar, where this particular kind of, can my cursor be seen? I guess it can be. So in this particular kind of signature wall, as we call it, which has very few windows, just enough for letting in glare-free light, but otherwise not enough for really heating the space, was very useful in providing an efficient air conditioning inside. Substitution can be seen in this, in the Terry building, which we did in the 1990s, in which we substituted all fossil resources, renewable resources. So we used solar energy for heating the water, solar energy for insulation. So again, solar energy for insulation. Then we use the cooling of the earth for earth-based cooling. And so you see the solar chimneys that form a prominent part of the elevation where the heated air goes up and gets exhausted at the top and so on. It is also seen in this project we did in the 90s, early 90s, in a place called Ranikhet, which is in the Himalayas. So when we decided to substitute Here we decided to substitute local quarried stone instead of fired bricks, and locally quarried slate roofs instead of classical GI sheets and stuff like that. And the interesting thing about this project was that there was a sense of people being proud of the fact that since the Supreme Court had ordered that only 2 pine trees per family were allowed to be harvested as to be considered sustainable, I found that a large house like this took, what we made a rule was that if this required 6 trees, then this house would not be delivered before 3 years. And people are actually proud of the fact. They are still proud of the fact. When I go and visit them, they still boast about the fact that, you know, my house took 3 years to make or 6 years to make, because I wanted this so large that I needed 6 trees or 12 trees or whatever it is. So this is an interesting thing about substitution, that it can actually be used as a selling technique rather than a negative thing. Substitution here is more usual. Steel is substituted for bamboo on the left. Fired brick is substituted for interlocking mud blocks on the right in a place called TZ. And here are 3 more examples of substitution where we have a variety of earth, stone materials which are found by digging pokhri in this place, which was used to make the stone floors and the stone masonry. The timber, of course, came from the trees that existed on site. This is a 65-acre farm, the Mueller Eco Farm in Pokhara, Nepal. I was particularly scared because of the fact that it was on the epicenter of the earthquake that happened a few years ago. And for a while, I lost contact with the owners. But after a week or so, they wrote to me saying that, no, this house withstood the test of time, and we slept through the earthquake, and now we know for sure that it is 100%, 110% fine. This was a famous little building which we did at the Rajpath Janpath crossing in Delhi, called the Martingale in Indira Gandhi National Center for Arts. And this is used making stabilized earth blocks. While on the right, you see a building which we did in local stone, a little bit of concrete, which you see in some of these beams. So we used local stone to make this eco farmhouse in Pataudi, where adobe has been used for the infill walls. So this is the green world as it happened, but there are 4 more things that I believe that we are missing out when we talk about responsibility. And this is what I feel that the youngsters amongst us will be living to see, which is equity, sufficiency, resilience, and identity. Let's take them one by one. Just a minute. Sufficiency is the business of being able to do more with less. So sufficiency, for example, consists of this particular building is the Sri Aurobindo Ashram, and you will know the EPI of various buildings is 140 and 80 and 65 is considered very good for air-conditioned buildings. 26 is considered very good for non-air-conditioned buildings. This is a non-air-conditioned building and it has an EPI of 4 or 5. And when I told this to the Ashramites who own this building, very proudly, they said, oh, isn't that too much? Because we must aim for 0. And of course, we are aiming for 0 now. And 5 has become 3. And with greater efficiency of fittings, let's see how far we reach. I'm sure we won't reach 0, but we'll reach pretty close. Sufficiency is also demonstrated in the way that we compute for recycling of resources in this, which was the IIT Jodhpur project, where we did the master planning. While resilience is the resilience is demonstrated in water sufficiency in these 3 projects. On the top left is a Taj Panna project, in which we made a 3-acre lake where various animals come to drink water and therefore give a very ringside view to these guest cottages, which you see nestling between the trees. On the right, you see the Agilent headquarters building again, which I showed you earlier, where recycled water irrigates these plants and manages these salad vegetables, which is then served to the workers in the canteen upstairs. And on the left, lower right, left, I see my front lawn being made just outside here, which had a series of perforated pipes which recycled the grey water to make it more resilient in terms of the way the grass grows. Equity has multiple dimensions. This is one of the dimensions that you need to respect the users of a space, even if they are tribal women like this. And this was a project we did in the 90s called Lok Jumbish, where we basically, this team, which you see on the lower right, looked at the way that people build for themselves and interacted with them and participated with them to make through their own models the way they would like to build. And this puppet show was simply a way of making a point and breaking the ice, while this is an example of a school building which was made by these people. This particular one was made by women masons from that same district. They were being trained for as masons. Now, equity is also of workers, no? People who use a building. So here you see the inside view of the same factory building I showed you, where you see how the environment is. And this is air conditioned at 28 degrees, which is the same cost of doing air conditioning as 22 and non-air conditioned, which is what was earlier. While on the bottom, you see my living room roof being made, where, I had designed it with concrete. Frankly, I was lazy. And then my wife taunted me saying, you're a great trainer of masons, so why don't you design something different? So I did, and I designed a dome that is what exists today. But of course, a dome that doesn't require any shuttering to make. Otherwise, it's a waste of good wood to shutter a dome and so on. So this was a technique that we learned from, from Hassan Fatih actually. And we applied here, and I trained these masons to do it. And recently I met them. And, as architects, we don't realize that we control a lot of the economy of the nation. And clearly, if these people can earn a better living out of the skills that they learn from a building, it is so much better than de-skilling them, which is what modern industrial construction tends to do. Equity is also demonstrated in this thatch work that is very typically Gujarati, again from Bhuj, where Sandeep Bhai has managed to get various local women to weave in their spare time these thatch shingles, which he buys for a very low cost and then puts them on top of the roof like this, like the lower right or upper left picture. And then when I say this is typically Gujarati is because they earn a livelihood out of this and they get better returns. Now, identity is the most difficult of these chapters to see, and identity is about whether this is ours, and that is what responsible architecture should be like, that we must not leave a sense of ourness, that it's ours. We can't be foreign about this. We can't be international about this. So this particular picture is from Sundarbans. And I must admit, this is difficult to say whether this is ours or not. This is a 5-star hotel. In that sense, it is not ours, but it's made of thatch and bamboo poles. And I leave you to decide whether you think this is sufficiently ours or not. This happens to be my house, also made in Gurgaon. I'm sitting under it right now. And this particular thing has a courtyard. It has wonderful south windows, so much so that we forget to even wear warm clothes in the winter. And we use second-class bricks, which were locally sourced in order to make this house. And lastly, let me see, I'm having some difficulty moving. Yeah. So lastly, I leave you with this slide, which is difficult to say whether it's ours or not. But this was the same slide that I used in similar school, which I showed you the courtyard of in the beginning. And this one was taken on the 25th anniversary of that school. And is this ours? I mean, this is a tree in the middle, a banyan tree, which was planted on the first day of the school. And this is the mother symbol in the foreground because this is an ashram school. And these are slates, white slates from Himachal Pradesh and so on. How much this is ours is something that I leave you to judge. And these are some of the issues that I feel are essential for responsible architecture. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sanjay sir, for showing the concepts and relating them to your projects. Very nice way of presenting. This is the first time I'm seeing someone using a single word you're using to explain the concept. So that was really nice. So I think now we can move to the Q&A session. So there are a few questions in the Q&A box, and I would request our panelists to please answer them. So let me just read out the questions for you. First question was for Mr. Dean. So this is by Mr. Yashu Gupta. Sir, can you explain a little more on the structural system of prefab Gurgaon office building?
Yeah, so the structural system, as I said, is basically a hollow column, hollow beam system. You see them in old railway stations where they're very light sort of edges to the column, or the sort of beams that you see in steel. And so it's just as lattice work on the side, and sometimes you see electrical pipes running through it, drainage pipes running through it. So the idea is that you just have this hollow column, you clad it with maybe a cement board on the edge, and you can service your services very easily just moving a panel. And it can either be welded together or can be bolted together. Of course, welding it together would give you greater inherent strength. Bolting means you have to over-design it a little. But the main thing is to really have that great flexibility, because a lot of times there's always a clash between our structure and our services. The services, we design the structure and then we have to, cut through the services. We have to, fix our services to the structure, and it usually turns out to be a little messy. Whereas actually integrating both structure and services can be an approach that can work very well. Yeah, I hope that answers it.
Thank you, sir. There's question for Sanjay sir, and I would say it's my question also. This is from Mr. Prashant Karnik. What or how does Sanjay sir start his thought process for any project?
Well, I wish I could answer that. I don't know. It's difficult. There is a whole lot of the way that life has been that allows me to think of any design brief as on its merits and then say, okay, this is what the promoter wants. And there are 20 different ways of achieving those ends. What is the most eco-friendly way? And I guess that is how I approach it. And there is always a better way of doing things. For example, I remember once we were designing a laterite-based set of cinema halls where it was very important to start containing the area. and we were just getting 10% more area than was required all the time. Then one of my young colleagues, who was from Bombay, I remember, he had a fantastic idea of tucking the box office inside the main hall, in the apron area where the screen is, and then raising the screen slightly. And that immediately reduced the cost, and that was fine. So it is a combination of cost and economy and environmentalism that informs the way that we approach a design. And to have any more details, I guess you'll have to join my office, because I don't think I can give you any more detail than that.
Thank you, sir. So there's one question for all three panelists. Do you believe that technology is the new tradition? Has technology always been the underlying layer of the holistic process of built environment, and only in the recent times it has become more important to include it in the bigger picture?
I think technology, that's misnomer. Even a mud block has technology built into it. So technology doesn't mean glass or steel or concrete. So everything has technology. So we think that in the past it was no technology; it was just a natural way of building. But it's a developed technology as well. And Sanjay maybe will try a little more.
Yeah, I strongly agree. I mean, we used bamboo technology to build that dome in Shanghai. It doesn't mean that there wasn't good technology behind it. I mean, there were top-notch engineers in our office and outside our office involved in getting those sections designed and then constructed. So everything is technology. And again, if the intent of this question is that you need to have a lot of glass and concrete and steel in order to classify it as technology, then the answer is no. But it's true that after the pandemic, it has become even more imperative for us to understand that we have to have convivial technology to be able to do anything at all, including making our buildings. Yeah, Chitra, your turn.
So since glass and steel has come, I talk about IoT, or using digital. So it is important, it's needed in certain ways, because it helps giving away more knowledge or doing it faster. So that technology married with whatever you can do with hand. So like Dean said, even making of stabilized mud block is a technology. Even making of Adobe is a technology. If you don't know how to knead it with your feet, then you cannot make an Adobe. And using the Adobe at the right place, at the right time is a technology. So when we talk about water, we developed a software where we know how much rain falls on your roof, and you work out how much of a tank would you need, or you decide on how many people are in the house and what kind of a grey water system would you need. And so you prepare a software and use it, making it easier than doing it again and again, but there's a lot of work done. So there is always no one answer, and also there is need to define what you mean by technology, and that's even making a chapati is technology. So everything is technology. Yeah.
So I think
I think I should say that most importantly. Yeah.
I think the question which has been asked, I noticed by an anonymous attendee. I hope by technology, this anonymous attendee doesn't expect this only technology to be that which is industrial technology, because that's only one type of technology. It's clearly, I think the three of us have demonstrated that we work with nature and not against it. And we use a lot of natural materials. And therefore, it's even more sensitive to technological intervention, meaning that you need to really understand how materials behave, and that is technology. And as Chitra says, making a chapati is technology, because you really need to understand and interact with how that piece of bread is going to bake itself and get roasted and so on.
You don't make chapatis.
I think it's the appropriateness of what we use. So, for example, what Sanjay showed, the little bit of concrete in that building, which is otherwise, mud. I mean, that's being sensible about it. So, you want to use something that's industrially produced, that may be having a high energy value into it, but use it to a minimal extent. So, one doesn't necessarily have to be completely caught up with the thing that, no, I must use only natural materials. It's fine to use technology wherever it's appropriate. In fact, we're seeing an evolution that's taking place of a hybrid architecture, an architecture which has appropriate materials which may be permanent. So say, suppose you're building in bamboo or another material which may not last that long if it's, as a structural system. So you may use concrete just as a very light framework, or steel as a light framework, and then you infill with natural materials. So, and that sort of movement is slowly taking place, especially in Southeast Asia. I see a lot of it taking place. And I think we can definitely experiment with that thing, where you're actually using high technology with some very basic, easily available local materials.
Yeah, very well said.
Thank you, sir. So one question from me, talking about the energy consumed in construction. So if you get a project where the building is already there, existing building, how do you decide whether to, just demolish everything? Okay, Chitra ma'am mentioned that she used the same material, but what would be the criteria to decide whether we should conserve the building, add other standalone structures to the building? Because is it like a lot of energy is already wasted in the already constructed structure and we are demolishing it, and then again we are coming up with something new? What would be your take on this in case you get an existing building project?
So is it I who should answer? Begin? Well, we demolished that building. We showed you the way it looked, and even the people who were living in it never liked it. Yeah, and it's in a space which is beautiful, and they wanted more accommodation, better light and more accommodation. It didn't make sense at all to retain it. So it was good to demolish. I think it's good to demolish some buildings, which if they're ugly and they're not really fulfilling the need. And it's also wise to use that material again. Use the building as the technical nutrient, which William McDonough says, in cradle to cradle, rather than keeping it just because it's been built. It's very important in that sense to demolish. And yes, you can always repurpose an old building. This is our office is repurposed to the first floor and has been repurposed to make it into an office from a place which was just a bedroom and a study. So both happens, and it all depends upon the context and the need. But at no time should you let the materials go away as waste. And I think I would put that as the main purpose of how we design. So we also demolish buildings, and we use that material in different ways. So we demolished a house recently, and they didn't want their steel windows, but we were designing a school where we had to save cost, and we talked to the clients and took the windows to the school, and they donated it almost instead of selling it away for steel, and used the other demolished material in a different site to raise up the foundation, to raise up the plinth. So you have to start connecting how you use the material. New buildings are a human right. Everybody wouldn't like to live in the same thing which has been built earlier. And you want some new spaces. In fact, now you make the new buildings like the way Dean's been saying, that it can be repurposed later. You can remove each of its material and redo and make something new. And that's how you should make buildings, not for 50 years, maybe just for 25 years.
Let me also give an example of what we did in Shanghai. Since we knew that this building would only last for 6 months, first of all, we could use something like bamboo technology alone as structural bamboo, because it didn't have to withstand the test of time. But more importantly, we decided that, and we wrote a tender like that, providing fixing and demolishing and reselling the materials. So there were two parts to it. So there was a positive part of the cost, and then there was a negative part to the reselling cost. And we designed everything, including the floor that you saw in the picture, to be, it was not bedded on cement, it was bedded on sand, so that the tiles could be taken off and everything, including the dome, could come away and be resold. Now we had a problem with the foundations, what to do, because these are pile foundations. So we discovered, much to our pleasure, the idea of steel piles. And what we did was, we got a screw steel pile made. We inserted that, we screwed it in, and after 6 months or 1 year after the expo was over and time for demolition had come, the screw piles were unscrewed and resold as scrap metal, which was great, because that way every bit of the material that we designed was repurposed.
Yeah, I can share also my example. The Tadoba project, which you see this elevated hotel on the thing, there were actually 6 cottages of the prefab style with the cement boards and, you know, aluminum framing and insulation in between. And it was really these ugly little buildings over there. When we dismantled them completely, so all the cement boards, all the insulation, all the aluminum framing was actually lifted up because it's lightweight. And here it was sitting on the old design was sitting on the ground on these heavy plinths, you know. So we're using the property of the material of it being lightweight. We've recycled everything into a structure which is well above the ground, which is still, you know, very light. And so you just respond to the nature of the material that they're recycling in a way, and you know, and you can definitely create something which is a good starting point in design.
Thank you, everyone. I mean, this, what Sanjay sir suggested, that is completely new thing that we can add in the contract itself. Complete life cycle of the building.
But having said that, let me also give you the negative side. There were various bureaucrats who disliked this form of tender writing. They said, you know, people will accuse me of being a corrupt bureaucrat, so I will not allow this. So they struck it off. Those plus parts of the cost, they struck it off in the tender and said, nee, we will pay for whatever is to be paid for, and we will have it demolished later at our cost.
Oh.
So a demolition tender was taken out anyway, and then this guy at least had the satisfaction of understanding that his pension won't be stopped because of corruption or something like that.
Okay.
So even though we designed this building to be demolishable, it didn't really mean that it was demolished. I think that's important to understand.
Right, sir. There is one more question from Mr. Sanjeev Kesri. Do you agree that the recent emphasis on technologies has caused any drift from the thought process for young architects in their architectural approach to any greenfield or brownfield projects? So are youngsters becoming more and more technology dependent? I think that is the gist of the question.
I think they're becoming visually dependent. So sort of our buildings, they start with how the building looks in terms of it, and rather than, you know, what's really needed at times. And I think it's because of the Internet of Things that, you know, people are attracted to something that's flashy, glossy. So they really start with this, you know, great looking image and then work backwards. Yeah. So I think it's something that we really need to think about, of, you know, where we're going in terms of the architecture that is happening today. Yeah.
And there's also a tendency to be able to do everything that is seen in cyberspace. So you can, using either parametric design or whatever skin-like materials, concrete-like materials, you can practically do any shape and size. Therefore, a lot of youngsters are unfortunately, drawn to that kind of approach for the glamour and looks. And that is something that I don't know whether I've been able to convey, that we were never really first looking at a particular look when we approached a project. The looks, if any, emerged from the way that the thinking was done, not the other way around.
I'm a lot more sympathetic in terms that we can't help it. It's a time when I think it was Socrates who said, "Why do you write?" Down to this. So this will be there, and I think it will take some time for people to understand how to use it better. And that will happen through experience. And yes, in the beginning, they will be very fascinated with how it looks. But when they start using it and how it gets used and they get feedback, there will be a lot of difference. And I think the world is big enough for many different ideas to come, and we should be open to it. We use a lot of the technology as much as possible. I wish I knew I could use better the software, because it does help. And so let's just wait how we use it, but it's possible.
Right, ma'am. I think that goes back to first year, form follows function or function follows form. So I think, sir, we can move to the next session. I would like to invite Chitra sir for vote of thanks.
Questions in the Q&A. You've asked all of them? There was one to me about the combustible material by Yash Mathur in Ateliers. I thought I should reply to that.
Yeah, please, madam.
Yes.
Yeah. So, yes, agreed. There is paper there, obviously, but I don't think that paper is something which will burn in no time. It will have a lot more time. What is the word for it, Sanjay? That it takes longer for it to burn off. But please understand how that coaching center was. And also, let's not forget the Kumbakonam example in Tamil Nadu, again, the school. First of all, there is no kitchen here. Secondly, not from every classroom you can go out. Unlike Surat, which was in the top floor and there was only one exit. So it's not just the material that you should be really thinking about. Even if you, at Surat, they used concrete. Okay, Kumbakonam, it was all concrete, but there was a thatch roof in between where the cooking was happening. So there is need to think about what material to use and how do you use, and then how do you design. Even if there is everything of concrete, fire happens and people die. Just because we have not kept to the fire distances, we're not designed for fire, we're not designed stuff. So it's not merely just the material, the combustible material. Yes, there's a lot more you have to think of when you design. Yeah, I think
I also I have one question on behalf of my daughter who has just done architecture. So she was asking me one day that do architects, so I'm trying to get some feedback from all of you, that do architects after completing a building go back to the users and take their feedback? So Sanjay did mention a little bit about like what kind of feedback he was collecting, but is there a formal way of collecting feedback? Do you collect feedback and then try and see how it has helped and what other intervention can be done to improve your future projects?
Yes, definitely.
Well, I did that. Yeah. Sorry.
I've remained friends with many of the clients of my and users of my buildings.
Okay.
And I wouldn't say there's a formal way of getting feedback, but yeah, it's as informal as it gets, and it's important. Without that, you can't become a good human being. And an
And I
architect
don't
has to
think,
first be a good human being.
and I don't think any client waits for a formal feedback. We
True.
just give you the feedback.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I actually
Yes.
visited a lot of my hotels a few years ago, and one by one spent a night in each one of them.
Okay.
And actually wrote down all the points which I liked in the hotel. This is like after 5-10 years after building them. And it was a great learning for me as well, because I realized what worked, what didn't, what was nice, what was bad. And I think it helped the client in, of course, improving the place, and also me in terms of actually improving the way we design it. So I think it's an important part of the design process, actually reviewing your buildings.
So don't you think that there should be as a project closure, there should be a feedback report after a use of maybe after 1 year or so, as a part of your project closure report, that this is how the users have been using and this is how they've been giving, and which of course feedbacks into the entire system of architecture, not just from an architectural perspective, but materials, construction, and entire process.
So there have been recent reports of a formal process of feedback, which has been instituted by people who, for example, certify for LEED and stuff like that,
Okay.
where they institute what is called a post-occupancy survey. But people don't necessarily speak the truth in surveys. And what Dean has done, staying in these hotels, and even what I have done, staying in these houses and in Ranikhet and talking to the occupants, is probably as instructive as a formal survey,
Okay.
which will simply throw up various numbers and say, okay, so many were dissatisfied, but will not tell you why they were dissatisfied or with what they were dissatisfied.
I don't think there can ever be a project closure for an architect. I still service buildings 35 years later.
Yes.
And it's your clients always become friends, and I think it's important that you're always open. If they
Yes.
modify their buildings over the years, so it's always part of an ongoing project and a friendship.
Okay.
And also, we keep getting so many feedback forms, even from the whole all kind of software we get. Who fills it up? Who does that? And are they even listened? I've done that. Fill up the feedback, but I don't get any reply. So I don't think these surveys and this whole thing works per se. But if you remain friends with the people for whom you have designed, and if they give your name to somebody else, I think that's more than enough. And that's how any practice works. It doesn't work on, I don't think it's a practice like a vendor's practice. It's extremely different. And for that, you really have to get it from the owner straight away, that they recommend you. And recommendation are better ways, better certification than any of this post-occupancy survey or anything.
So it was a very interesting discussion, and I'm sure all the participants would have really enjoyed it, and the kind of in the chat and we were seeing some feedback, everyone has really enjoyed it. And we'd like to thank all of you, Chitra, Sanjay, and Dean, for sharing your thoughts. And as we discussed, we want to carry this further into something more meaningful, and we will work on that how can we also involve students in the further. So we look forward to working and taking your help in defining those problem statement for a competition. Thank you very much, and thank you everyone, all the participants, for coming and attending.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.